Welcome, everybody. There's still plenty of empty seats here in the front for those of you coming in. There's plenty of seats. We're filling up with more chairs in the back as well. We'd like to start the program. On behalf of all of the partners of the JCon event, I'd like to welcome all of you to this year's 4th annual JCon Real Estate Summit. It's a pleasure to see such a nice crowd, and we're honored to be having a special guest speaker coming up momentarily. Shh. Shh. Okay. As soon as it gets quiet enough, we'll start the program. Okay, so as this is a real estate event, but it's a Jewish real estate event, we'd like to start by sharing a vart, a word of Jewish wisdom. So, in what is probably the first story in the Torah, in the Bible, of real estate, it's Parshas Chaye Sarah, the 5th Torah portion, where the Bible, the Torah, speaks about how Avraham Avinu, our forefather Abraham, purchases the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, the cave of the patriarchs, from Ephron. This is the story of real estate, the first real estate acquisition mentioned in the Bible. And so I'd like to read to you some interesting words that are mentioned when Avraham purchases the field. So here is the pasuk, the verse. Vayakom stay Ephraim asher b'machpelah asher lifnei mamrei hasada v'amara asher boi v'chol ha'etz hasasher b'sada asher b'chu gvulei saviv. So the pasuk says, Vayakom stay Ephraim. When Abraham purchased the field, it says, and the field of Ephron stood, Vayakom, which is a very unusual word to use. So if you look in Rashi, the foremost commentator, Rashi says, what does it mean, Vayakom? Tekuma haisala. The field had an elevation. When Avraham purchased the field became elevated. It was lifted up. And Rashi says a very strong words, Miyad hedjait liyad melech, from the hands of a simpleton to the hands of a melech, to the hands of a king. But the Torah is conveying here two powerful messages about purchasing real estate. Number one is that as soon as you make the purchase, even before you inhabit it, just by purchasing it, it becomes yours and you elevate it. And number two is that you, as the owner, Vayakom, the field gets an elevation. So everybody that purchases real estate, even if they don't actually live in the real estate, but just by purchasing it, Vayakom, you elevate it. So we, as the Jewish nation who are the light unto the nation, even mundane acquisitions like purchasing property, dealing in real estate, that land has a relationship to you, and Vayakom, you elevate it, especially when it's utilized in ways of holiness and in ways of Kedusha. And so with that thought in mind, we'd like to get this evening rolling, and I'd like to call out my partner in this event, Shia Rubenstein, the Executive Director of the JCC of Marine Park, to MC.
Thank you, Rabbi Yeshua. Welcome, everyone, to the 4th Annual JCon Real Estate Conference. It's a pleasure to see a packed room and standing room. I just want to invite, we do have a few scattered seats, so please feel free to come. You're in for a big treat, and it's going to take a little bit, so please make yourself comfortable. They're bringing in more chairs as well, but if you're standing on the back or around the walls, feel free to find a seat. You're in for a huge treat tonight. We have a fantastic conversation with Ralph Herzka, the CEO of Meridian. His schedule was extremely fluctuating, and he, went beyond to make sure to be here this evening. So a huge yasher koach for making that special effort. Before we go to our keynote, I would like to call up a dear friend and a leader of the Jewish community. For those of you that were fortunate to be here at the previous seminar that took place in this room, you heard him. He's someone I try to emulate He's a brilliant attorney. He's a great speaker. He's a leader of the largest social service charity organization called Met Council of Jewish Poverty, but he also comes with a unique perspective of being the chair of the Land Use Committee at the New York City Council, and he was the Jewish elected official for many years representing Borough Park, and then on the Land Use Committee citywide, and he's been a huge, huge contribution to the Jewish community. And he took that koyach and he went to advocate for over 100,000 New Yorkers, or perhaps he'll correct me when he comes up. Perhaps it's even more. Met Council also does a lot of affordable housing, which makes him also unique in the real estate space. So without any further ado, before we start our evening, I would like to call up David Greenfield, the CEO of Met Council, to say a few words.
Can you hear me? I guess not. Now it's on? Beautiful. Shia, I want to thank you, Shia Rubenstein, for the phenomenal work that you've done putting this together, your great leadership at the JCC of Marine Park. I know this was a dream. We literally have standing room only here tonight, so give it up for Shia Rubenstein, who's done some incredible work. I want to thank Yeshua and all of the sponsors here tonight, including EPI and the great folks at Mishpacha magazine for what they've been doing. It's really incredible. You know, Shia called me at the last minute and said, David, can you do me a favor? He said, there's a lot of changes going on in the political world now as it relates to real estate. And a lot of folks are very anxious about what's happening. Can you spend 5 minutes and talk to the leaders of the real estate community in New York about the shifting landscape as it relates to real estate and politics in New York City? So the first thing to think about as it results in terms of the shifting landscape, and I'm actually timing myself because I want to be punctual and I want everybody here to get max out of Ralph Herzka, who's a dear friend and a great person, and I came here tonight to hear him as well, so I'm looking forward to that. I just want you to think about this. There is no other industry that is more tied to New York City and New York State politics than real estate. And if you think about it at its very core, the basics, your real estate taxes, right? That's a huge expense. That comes from the city. If you want to develop real estate, you have to deal with a myriad of city agencies, including the wonderful Department of Buildings. And in some cases, other agencies, for example, like the Department of City Planning or the New York City Council if you're doing a rezoning. And when we focus on rent regulations, there are a myriad of city and state rules as well. I would argue that there is no other industry that is more impacted by New York City and New York State politics than the real estate industry. The reason this matters is because if you think about it, the city and the state essentially control a huge proportion of the value of your real estate. I'm a professor at Brooklyn Law School, and I teach my law students land use and zoning regulations. The first thing that I teach my students, and it's actually worth exploring just for 30 seconds tonight, is the 10th Amendment, which says that all rights not given to the federal government go to the state. Why is that important? Because the state has the power to regulate cities. The city doesn't do anything on its own. Everything that you've seen happen that's been significant in the last 30 days has come from Albany, because Albany has the right to overrule the city, and that's actually what happened. So if you look at the major changes, and we actually discussed it in the last panel, we went in depth, but just think about big picture. Permanent rent regulations. It's not every few years now, it's forever. Vacancy decontrol, reductions of IIs and MCIs. All of these things happen in the state, and the state supersedes the will of the city. Now, the obvious question is, what happened? You're not going to like this answer, some of you, but this is the honest truth, and I'm a political commentator. I'm on New York One just about every Tuesday. I'm occasionally on CNN and Fox. The reality is that because New York is a blue state, we react differently to the national trends. So when Donald Trump became president, because he moved the country as a whole to a right, the reaction in New York State and New York City was, we moved to the left. This isn't brand new. In fact, 2 years ago, the city council passed a law called the right to counsel. If you're familiar with that, that really upended the equation in terms of tenants, residential tenants and landlords, because now every single residential tenant is guaranteed a lawyer for free to defend them, which really changes the leverage in terms of if you want to evict a tenant, for example, right? But the major changes that really happened was here in New York City, and this was really the biggest deal, AOC won last year. Everybody here knows who AOC is, and nobody here knew who AOC was a year ago. Is that fair? You know who AOC is? Of course you know who AOC is. That started a tipping point in New York where essentially what happened was ultra-progressive legislators started challenging not just Republicans. They're now challenging moderate Democrats and knocking them out, and that's what happened in the New York State Senate. In the Senate in Albany, where the rules have passed, for many years the Republicans controlled the Senate. Now what's happened is the Democrats control the Senate, and as a result, it's not just moderate Democrats, it's very left-wing progressive Democrats. So a lot of people ask me, what's next, David? What do you think is going to happen next? I actually think it's going to get a little bit worse from your perspective. I firmly believe the next big battle in New York over the next 2 years is going to be universal rent control, and that includes commercial, retail, and residential. So that impacts everybody. And if you want to know what that looks like, it's really very simple. There's already legislation that has a lot of support in New York State. It's called good cause eviction. Good cause eviction is the first part of essentially what will be universal rent control. What that means is, and it's the start, is that if you're a tenant and at the end of your term, your landlord wants to raise your rent, your landlord may not raise your rent more than 1.5 times the cost of inflation. Cannot do that anymore, and that is legislation that there was a big push to get it done this year. There wasn't support for it this year, but I do believe that's going to be the big battle next year. In New York City, there is a similar law called the Small Business Job Survival Act, which ostensibly is to help small businesses, but the way it's written right now, it would really impact all businesses, which essentially would do the same thing, except on commercial leases. So if you have a commercial or retail lease, at the end of your lease, and if you decide, hey, I want to charge a lot more rent, your tenant can say, nope, I want to go to binding arbitration. Well, you'll say, well, that's not so bad, binding arbitration. They could take things into account like what is the value of the property. Actually, part of a little-known area of the law that people haven't focused on is that that binding arbitration actually will include regulations from the city to decide exactly how much rent you can actually raise on those tenants as well. So the obvious question that people ask me is, what can you do? Three quick pieces of advice. One is, everybody in this room needs to register to vote. You're going to say, oh, it doesn't matter. You're wrong. It does matter. And if you're registering to vote, even if you're a Republican, you should register as a Democrat, because in New York, the only elections that matter are Democratic primaries. 99% of the people who get elected in a Democratic primary will go on to win the general election, because New York is a very liberal city. If you think it doesn't matter, just 2 weeks ago, there was an election in Queens. There was 2 candidates for district attorney, Melinda Katz versus Tiffany Caban. The race now is a tie. I'm not exaggerating. 16 votes separate them, and they're actually going into a manual recount of 80,000 ballots. In case you're curious, the difference between Tiffany Caban and Melinda Katz is a mainstream Democrat. Tiffany Caban has said publicly she will not prosecute drug dealers. Instead, she thinks the real criminals are predatory landlords, and that's who she plans on prosecuting in Queens. Just to give you a sense of the scope. Now you're going to say, but we have people in Queens, they vote. In Forest Hills, Queens, the community there voted 1/4 the percentage as did Long Island City. So you got to register, and you actually have to vote. And the final thing is, you need to really think about advocacy. If you're not organized, you're not getting anything done. Every single Tuesday in Albany this year was Tenant Tuesday. How many people here went to Albany this year? I'm raising my hand because I was there 6 times. Anybody else? 2. 3 out of 500. That's not great. You got to get organized. Folks have reached out. We're happy to do this as a service. It's not what we do, but we're happy to connect you in the back. Avi Spitzer, who works for me, he'll raise his hand and you'll see him. Or you can come to me, stand up, obviously people actually see what you look like. Or you can come to me afterwards. I'm happy to connect you with people who are getting organized. It's important that you have a voice and that you get organized. So this is where I'll leave you at. This is not the end. It is not the beginning of the end. It is perhaps the end of the beginning. I thank you for having me, and you're in very good fortune because Ralph Herzka is phenomenal, and he will give you a much more inspiring and uplifting message than I will tonight. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay, we're only 3 minutes away from beginning our keynote. I would like to once again thank Cross River Bank, Meridian, and KO, Sol and Friedman, our partners EPI, and my dear friend Srilly Rosenbaum of Madison Title. I'd like to ask him to please come up for 1 minute to introduce our introducer. Please.
Thank you all for coming this evening, and thank you, Shia, and thank you, Reb Shia, for making such a wonderful event and allowing Madison to be a partner in this amazing evening. Madison as a company is a suite of services for commercial real estate transactions, from the title, 1031 exchange, cost segregation, and many other services. It is like I said, a schus that we could partake in Yidden coming together and sharing their expertise, mentoring, trying to do deals with each other, and being Mekayim the David HaMelech of Leichna Sparna Zumizu. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Avi Lazar, from CEO of Mishpacha Magazine, as to introduce our to be our panel.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome all the speakers, mentors, participants, and vendors to the 4th Annual Real Estate Summit here at Diker Beach Golf Course. I wish to take this opportunity to personally thank our partners, Shia Rubenstein, Yoshua Werdy, and their dedicated staff, most notably Avi Krakauer, wherever you are, as well as our own Michal Frischman, for their tireless work and attention to detail that makes tonight, like every JCon event, a resounding success. More than a magazine, Mishpacha Media Group has a 30-year history of bringing contemporary topics and issues before the public eye. Whether to ignite social change, bring sorely needed awareness to a buried subject, or build bridges to create new opportunities within our community, Mishpacha boldly stands at the crossroad of innovation and creativity week after week, working around the clock to capture the pulse of the frum world. One such issue is the ever-growing struggle within our community to financially support a family. We have written about it extensively in Mishpacha Magazine and 2.0, our new business and innovation magazine. However, we realized that we can do more than just the printed word. In Israel, Mishpacha publisher Eli Palei, through the Haredi Institute for Public Affairs, researches and provides data for policymakers on issues like economics, employment, housing, and welfare of frum families, thus enabling changes in tangible ways. Here in the US, we're inspired to work outside the constructs of our magazine as well, which is why we're proud to partner with JCon on this and future shared endeavors to help facilitate and realize success and prosperity within our community. The real estate market is of extreme importance to our community, and the recently passed New York City rent regulations has certainly created quite a stir. This evening, we have assembled a group of highly talented and experienced speakers and mentors to help navigate us through the new law and its implications, as well as other seminars designed to examine strategies, secrets, and tactics to maximize your individual potential. Tonight, 10 seconds. Tonight, JCon and Mishpacha are proud to present our keynote speaker. Mr. Ralph Herzka began Meridian Capital Group in 1991 and became a well-known leader in the mortgage industry, setting standards in expertise and vision within the industry. His generosity and reputation as a Baal Tzedakah and a Baal Chesed is also legendary. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Ralph Herzka.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So last year it was extremely successful that instead of just having a 45-minute long keynote, we had in conversation with, it was Jordan Sloan last year, and it was very successful. So we went through the same model. I'll present some opening questions, and feel free to elaborate as you see fit. So if I can start, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the mortgage and real estate space.
Good evening, and thank you very much for hosting me. First of all, I want to thank David for giving me only upside because all that, actual depressing talk that we heard is all true. But as the ultimate optimist, I'm going to take a more positive spin, so I hope you don't mind. But I want to thank David. David is not just a leader, someone that has devoted so much time to our community, and now at Met Council, the most amazing work that he's doing. So let's thank him for that. I also want to thank JCOM for inviting me, and I actually think events like this are really productive, and hopefully many of you will learn something and feel free to come over to me afterwards. But the reality of it is, I remember as a young guy starting out, I would always go and talk to older people. Thank God I didn't listen to some of them who told me don't go into the real estate business in 1982 because the business is oversaturated and it's already at the peak. So you're always going to hear those things. So my name is Ralph Herzka. I'm 57 years old. I live in Flatbush. For those of you that know, I am building a new house. It's more than one lot, so I just want to get it out of the air so you don't have to worry about it. Yes. Someone came over to me in shul and said, Ralph, at your age, people are downsizing. I said, I took 5, I'm making it into 1. That's a downsize. So I figured we'll get that out of the way so no one can worry about that. But here's the reality. The reality of it is I am in real estate since literally I'm a kid. I started my first deal when I was 19 years old. And a cousin of mine had a building in Seagate and came over to me and said to me, anyone that wants to buy a building. I always loved construction, and I would actually spend time in Borough Park going from site to site of every single building. In fact, I lived on 55th Street between 16th and 17th Avenue, and I convinced my parents not to make me go to camp so I could watch them build Torres Emes Commodits on 56th Street between 16th and 17th Avenue, and I would get there every morning on my bike and spend my whole day there. So I love construction. And I met this cousin of mine. He said, I'm trying to sell a building in Seagate, and I don't have success. Do you know anyone? I knew a contractor that bought dilapidated buildings. If anyone heard David Scheckman say that before, I'm a big believer, if you're in real estate, you have to touch the real estate. So I remember driving out to Seagate, seeing this hovel, but it was a nice location, and I found a contractor that wanted to buy a building, and I actually brokered my first deal. I come home from yeshiva one day, and my mother says to me, this guy called for you. And growing up, my name was not Ralph, it was Raphael, and I decided Raphael is Raphael. So as my new broker, I called myself Ralph Herzka, and I made this shidduch, which I sold the building from one person to the other. I think the price was $400,000, and negotiated myself a $10,000 commission. My phone rings, my mother says, this guy left you a message, Harvey Hino, 718-934-2900. I call him back, and he says to me, I heard you sold a building. I said, wow, this is exciting. I just sold a building, now they're reaching out to me already. He says, there's only one problem. You're not a licensed broker, and I have the listing. I said, no. The problem is, I had the buyer, you had the listing, you didn't do anything with it. Why don't I come see you? I go to his office, 24th and Avenue U. I walk in there, beautiful space, anyone who knows Heino Realty. And I walk in there and he says to me, I said to him, okay, so I sold the building, you had the listing. If I worked for you, what would my commission be? He said, you'd get half and I'd get half. I said, okay, we're gonna split it. I walked out with my first real job and spent 2 years in real estate over there. So that's how I started in real estate, and then moved on to the mortgage business. But you have a list of questions, so I'm going to try to be disciplined and listen to you and try to answer your questions.
So everybody has heard of Meridian. You have, a great staff, a lot of salespeople. How do you motivate people to be such a leader in the industry? It's a sales-based job.
Overpay them. They never... No. How many Meridian guys in the room here? All right, I'm in for trouble. No, seriously, I'm really proud of the people in the company. I think that when I look every single day and see the deals that we're doing and meet the people, I'm really proud. And people is what make any great company. There are a lot of great individuals, but when you get a company together And the way we motivate them is we are like a family. The company is 400 people today. It's getting harder. But I think that we deal with issues. We respect each other. There's a tremendous amount of respect within the company for what we do. And it's worked. It's worked in many, many ways. And it's not always, oh, wow, we sold a deal. Sometimes we lose a deal. But you should see just from a family. I mean, being in business for 35 years, we've had tragedies. We've had a lot of happiness together. And when you're together in any situation, it works. So the question was, how do we motivate them? I think one of the motivating factors, I'm a very driven person. I work really hard. So it's hard for anyone to say, oh my God, he's not working hard, so I can take it easy. So I think that's one of the facts, what I'm told.
I have been told that you're the greatest salesman in your company. Another question. We're sitting here in a room with 500 people or 600 people that want to succeed. A bunch of young entrepreneurs. As you can see, there's a lot of young faces. Over 90% of the people over here are in their 30s and 40s. What words of advice would you give them generally in the real estate space to succeed?
So first of all, I want to tell you, when I come into a room, I assess the situation. So you guys told me there was 600. I honestly did not believe you. So I came in here, counted the amount of chairs, and there are 20 rows of 30. You are 600 people, so I want to thank you for that. So I think everyone, you asked a really easy question, but a tough question. And you say there are 600 people here that want to succeed. And what does success really mean in each individual's life? And I think that you're here because you're interested in real estate. And I will just say something. I'm doing this for 35 years, and I am amazed how every single day there is another opportunity in real estate. And even in my stage of my career, where I have access and I see huge opportunities, I am amazed how many young people come to me with opportunities that are unique, that are thought out, and that have successes. And I just want to say one thing. I mean, when I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Brooklyn, grew up in Brooklyn, and plan on staying in Brooklyn. And I missed the whole Brooklyn market. Did not believe that rents would go to $55 a foot in the Williamsburg. And I remember young guys coming to me and saying to me, this is what's going on. And one of my mistakes was I didn't get out there and see it. So what's the advice to anyone that's here? Real estate, we heard from our speaker before from the biblical times. We're not going to go back that long. But I just will tell you that there is not a day that goes by that I don't see unique opportunities, even in this market. And I think David Scheckman, who spoke in the other room. David, are you here? All right, I came to listen to him. He didn't come listen to me, but that's okay. It's fine. He's a great broker, but he said something, and I think that is the most unique thing, the most ununique thing, but the most important thing for everyone to realize. Advice is great, but when you go to someone that's in real estate for 20 years and they see what's going on in the market, they don't see the opportunities. It takes young, almost naive, and people that are willing to say, I'm going to take a little bit of a gamble to create some opportunities. Because someone that owned, I remember in real estate, when I started out young, and I'll share some of those experiences with you, but I would go to see clients that owned 10 or 20 or 30 buildings, and I would mention a building to them, and they say, that's not a good building. And they lived in the history, they lived in the past. Real estate is current. There's so many things that are happening. We have clients that have retail, and some of them are just sitting with vacant retail, but then we have young, vibrant clients that have made it into pop-up stores and so many other things. Don't listen to people when they tell you, oh, real estate is saturated. We at Meridian have 400 people. I constantly am amazed how young brokers come in and bring clients in that we thought we have and that we never even heard of. So I think that is my advice. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Touching on David's topic, or doomsday, in terms of the concerns of the the New York State rent rule regulations, many people, started out by buying, multifamily, and they figured it's safe. It'll give me a 6, 7, 8, 9% return. What are your thoughts in terms of, in light of what's happening now?
So what I'm really saying publicly is that I'm not giving public comments on it because I think it's early on. I think the laws that came out are really draconian. I think they are severe. I think the real estate community missed it. You heard it from David, they didn't have a proactive approach to it. I don't think the laws that were passed, they even thought they would get them through. They thought there would be huge opposition. And I think at the end of the day, the unintended consequences will be so severe to New York City from just everyone else that works in real estate that will get affected. However, I'm an optimistic person. I do believe that things will adjust. I think some of these laws could get changed, but I think that we're going to go through some pain over the next 5 years while this thing gets sorted out. I don't know if it's 20 years. I don't know if it's the beginning of the beginning, the end of the beginning, the beginning of the end. It's somewhere that's not great, but I think young people coming into the industry should not take that as, okay, I'm getting out of real estate because real estate. People need to live, people need to work, and as much as, you know, we see that X amount of people are moving away and some people advise you to move away, my advice is pick a niche, find what it is. And real estate is not just New York City. There are many, many places that you can you can buy and sell real estate. And there are many people around this room that have been extremely, at Meridian and other firms, successful out of New York City, you know, over the last 5 years and over the last few years. I do agree with David that there will be some more pain before it gets better. I'm not sure it is, and I don't want to speculate, but I think this time the real estate community will be more proactive and hopefully will adjust. But when the New York Times writes an editorial that many other states should now copy New York because they've done this wonderful thing. Now, I really mean this 100% sincere. I think they hurt, not just the real estate industry, they hurt every tenant in New York. I started out my career, I would go to co-op board meetings. What that means is someone had a building in Queens, there was an underlying co-op loan, and I would walk in there and it would be in the laundry room, at the back of the boiler room, it would be a folding table with chairs, and you'd meet the board. And who was the board? The board were 6, 8 people, school teachers, accountants, that ended up buying an apartment on Yellowstone Boulevard, on Shore Road. When a building converted for $200,000, they get a mortgage, and they put their life savings. I literally had people that said, I appreciate my landlord. He made me a millionaire because my apartment is now worth $1 million. How many people moved out of New York City because they were able to get a check and retire on that because the vacant value of that apartment was worth a lot of money? So I think while this was really because a bunch of people just thought they were protecting tenants, and they did because there's always been some landlord that abused the system. In all, I think they hurt many, many industries, including the tenants themselves in certain ways.
So because a lot of people are concerned about the new regulations, there's been a lot of talk about, like you say, purchasing out of state. So the real question is, you know, if somebody is doing very well and can afford to purchase 1,000 units in Arizona, it's, you know, they can set up a management team. But the smaller people that are looking to start, does it make sense for them to purchase a multifamily, a 10 or 20 unit far away where it's difficult to get to?
There's a lot of states between here and Arizona. There's something called New Jersey, there's Maryland, there's Connecticut. You know, you get in a car, you can drive there. You know, if you want to leave home and go away for a week and buy in Arizona, that's a different reason. But the reality of it is, I think that there are many, many people that have bought 10 and 20 and 30 unit buildings in Jersey City, in West New York, in Newark, and have done extremely well in those.
Where do you see the interest rates heading over the next 24 months? And part B is, what's your sweet spot for lending in today's marketplace?
So I never like to predict interest rates because I think it's unpredictable. I will say that back in December when we had a 10-year Treasury at 317 or 321, I was a real believer that it wouldn't stay there. Anyone that was running to rate lock, I kept on saying to them, I'm not so sure you could do it. You should do it. We think rates will come down. I didn't think it'd be where it is now at 2%. I think we're in a different economy, and I think in general rates are not going to, they're going to fluctuate. They're going to be up 25 basis points, down 25 basis points. I don't believe that we're going to see, rates skyrocket. Even when you get a great job reports like Friday, so rates move up 5 basis points, they come back down. So I think as far as interest rates, as far as in the firm, we're constantly advising clients what to do. If you have a loan that's maturing a year from now and you can take advantage of it now, don't wait because there is a small risk. But we are telling clients all the time, don't pay huge penalties to do it today to save 3 years out because we don't think it's going to go up. But again, every situation is unique. As far as, we don't have sweet spots. We are an advisory firm. We represent clients that are very important to the firm. If it's a $500,000 loan or a $500 million loan, you're important to us. So our sweet spot is service. We believe that anyone that is in the real estate business would like them to be a client of the firm and would like to service you correctly. If you're unrealistic, we try to make you realistic, and then you appreciate, the value that we brought to you. So I hope that answers the question.
No, it's great. Touching on the previous topic, you do what many others do. What makes you unique to become a leader in the industry? You do mortgages like many other companies. How did you build your brand?
I didn't know anyone else did mortgages, so I might need therapy if... I think, that's a really complicated question, yet really simple. I think it's like anything else in life. If you do it and you do it well and you're sincere and honest about it, you will have repeat clients. Tiffany prides himself that 70-some% of their business is repeat customers. We believe that if a customer is satisfied, they will keep on coming back. We have tremendous loyalty. Yes, of course, there are others that do it, and some do it well. But as a majority, I think the firm has developed relationships with lenders that we can get things done that others can't. I think we're really brutally honest, brutally smart, and brutally hardworking. And when you combine those three things, it's a very unique mix. To be aggressive, smart, honest, and really, really care for your client. I can tell you many situations where brokers will walk into me and say, what do you think I should do? I said, why is this guy doing it? It's not the right thing for him to do. Whether it's a sale of a real estate piece, it's a financing. Give him a lower leverage deal, give him a cheaper rate, give him longer term interest only because it's a family asset and he should not be leveraging it. There's a famous classic story that I had a client that I representing the family literally for 30 some odd years. One of my brokers came to me and said, they're thinking of selling the building. What do you think? Can you put in a good word? I said, the only word I'm going to tell them is don't sell the real estate. I said, why? I said, because they're going to sell a New York City piece of real estate, buy it Walgreens or something in Wisconsin, and ultimately will not hold on to the value that they've created in New York City. That's a family asset. And we honestly believe that we give people good advice. And I can tell you over 30 years, I've had many, many, many sons and grandsons come to me and say, my grandfather told us you told him to do this and told him to this, and it really worked out well for the family. Now, it's easy when it's an up market, so I can take all the credit. But I think, in being in the business 35 years, I've gone through 4 cycles. Remember that. 87, 94, the crisis, the meltdown, we're going to go through it. And I think if you just stay true to your beliefs, you will succeed in anything you do.
So what would your advice be? There are many people, young people in the room, they want to get into investing in real estate, but there's a large hurdle. In order to get a mortgage through Meridian, you have to put down your 25, 30%. And starting out, you don't necessarily have that first $200,000, $300,000, $500,000. What would be the best advice to try to get into the multifamily or development space?
So I get this question all the time, and it's very hard in a room of 600 plus people to give general advice. First of all, I'm not sure that everyone should invest in real estate. It's a skill set. You need to manage it. You need to raise the money. You need to know how to do it. There are many ways to make money in real estate without having to go out and raise the money, and then you can make some money and invest it. And I've counseled some of my brokers over the years. Oh, I want to go into real estate. I said, you're in real estate. No, but I don't own real estate. I said, then you know what? You do very well as a mortgage broker. Buy some real estate. Invest with your clients. So I think the answer is, as a general rule, I will tell you, real estate is a great industry. It's got a lot of ancillary businesses, not just the mortgage and sales. We recently started a leasing group. We've done over 60 some odd leases in 12 months. And I'm amazed how well we're doing, even in this retail market, because we're really focused, and it's a certain sector. And you know what? I met a guy recently, and he said to me, I'd like to come work for you. I said, you might be good in the retail leasing division. We've just started what's called an opportunity zone. That is the most fascinating new thing in real estate. How many people in this room even know that this thing exists called opportunity zone? Okay, good. That is not New York City rent guidelines. That is the first time that non-real estate investors can shelter their long-term capital gain by investing in real estate. The estimate that $6 trillion of unrealized gain will move into real estate over the next 30 months. That is not multifamily in New York City. So what I'm trying to say is you can really make a lot of money by not only investing in real estate. It's great, and it's the dream everyone wants to be. I own real estate, but let me tell you something. Not everyone is cut out for that. But everyone is cut out to do something in the real estate industry. You can be the greatest rental broker. You can do anything that you are good at and apply that to real estate. And I'll just say one thing. Success is always going to take time. There are no shortcuts in real estate or in any business. And we've all seen over the years that shortcuts don't work. So just stick to what you're going to do. Today, with so much out there and technology, you can be so knowledgeable about anything. I was just in Panama for 2.5 days, and I had a VIP tour of the Panama Canal. So I wanted to be intelligent. I can honestly tell you that I read everything up in 20 minutes about the Panama Canal. I almost got arrested because, as a joke, I said to the security guy, yeah, I'm here as a liaison for the Trump administration to take back the Panama Canal. And I didn't realize what that really meant. But the greatest part was the VIP went really quick, went well. And when I came to passport control, and it took them 5 minutes to release me, I was a little concerned. But at the end of the day, we spent $6 billion building a Panama Canal. It's fascinating. And Jimmy Carter gave it back in 1977 to Panama. And let me tell you what I found the most fascinating thing was there's hundreds of boats that come through it, and there's a market. If you're like the third boat online and you want to sell your spot to someone behind you, you can do that. So I'm actually thinking how we can apply these things to the mortgage business, but I haven't developed it yet. But anyway, so there's always opportunities, and don't be shy.
So just to elaborate on your last comment, that you can be good at something else in real estate, but slowly invest, and it takes time. So for the average person who saved up that $100,000, how would you tell them to start their investing career? Because $100,000 is not necessarily enough, or $50,000 to purchase.
So I never give investment advice specifically, but I think today there are actually some good crowdfunding platforms that have good track records. You can invest in real estate. You can track your assets that people have actually done pretty well in. So I think a $100,000 investment, you can be transparent, you can see what it is. But there are many really good young guys that are buying 6 and 12 and 18 family that you can invest in $100,000. If the guy does a good job, you'll get back 70% of your money in a 3-year period, and then you'll continue to get income from it. So, just do me one favor, don't put your last $100,000 in, because that's not smart.
Wow, time is really flying by. We're almost at the end of our conversation. So before we finish, I'd love to ask you for any closing thoughts.
The closing thoughts are, if you're in this room and you're in real estate and you don't use Meridian, try us out. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope this was informative.